Change is around us every day. So, how do you manage the changes that happen in mining year round? Welcome to another episode of Change Itself, hosted by Gus Miner and Eric Demers. The show is brought to you by Sophie and Technica Mining and is produced by Crownsman Partners. Now, let's get on with your hosts, Eric and Gus.
Welcome, everybody, to Change Itself. Brand new year, first episode of the year, 2022. Glad you guys can join in and be part of the conversation. Looking forward to delivering some great content to you guys. Eric and I have been planning on some great guests and great information over the year. So we look forward to having you join us. If you want to follow and stay tuned with the upcoming episodes through the year and beyond, please go ahead and reach out to us on LinkedIn for Change Itself. You can also go to changeitself.com to get access to our webpage and our YouTube channel where you can ring the bell and follow along. We would be honored to have you follow the journey and be part of the conversation. So today we've got great content again coming to you with the topic of the politics of change management. And we've got a guest with us today to discuss about that with Jake Hughes from Technica Mining. Eric, how did things go over the past month since our last episode?
Things are going good. Things are rolling, getting really dialed on the New Year's resolutions and the big changes being made. No pun intended, but I guess personally, and trying to watch what I eat, get a little bit of exercise in, probably that stereotypical New Year's resolution, and then getting some action on the house building plans. You?
Right on. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I've been along the same. I mean, my wife got herself a Peloton for Christmas, so we've been having some races on that, and that's been pretty fun. And at the same time, we've been really dialing in on these different wearable devices, and lo and behold, discovered that I possibly have sleep apnea. So here we go, right? We're diving into the data and getting some help. So we'll see what happens. We'll get the medical advice based on that. It was pretty funny to call my doctor and just say, hey, my Fitbit or my Garmin watch told me I got sleep apnea. Can you confirm that? So,
you took our last guest literally and really took on the wearable thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's once you know, right? But if you keep it, you don't know what you don't know. So it's interesting. So yeah, so if maybe we want to kick off the show, Eric, do you want to introduce our guest since he's a near and dear acquaintance of yours?
Yeah. So welcome to the first episode of 2022, Jake. This is Jake Hughes. Jake Hughes is Safety and Training Superintendent at Technica. He's one of the guys that has shown me the ropes, and respect him tremendously. And he's an expert, I guess, in the industry of mining. So welcome to the show, Jake, and it's a pleasure to have you here and to be able to talk about the politics of change with you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Gus. Excited to be here. I think I'm interested to see where the conversation goes. So politics of change, awesome subject, big subject, and let's see where we go with it.
For me, it's always been a magical journey, right? When we talk about change, and there's things that you got to take account for and manage properly, if you call it management, right, at home, where there's different things that are happening, whether it's communication with your children when you're changing households or changing cities, or if there's a requirement to change a school. I mean, changes around us in every single format, and sometimes we try to use those same kind of strategies, if you will, at work, and vice versa. Sometimes we're trying to take some strategies that we learned at work and bring them home. Not always that successful, but it's always a learning piece. How has it been for you guys, Eric and Jake, as far as tackling the different types of changes that we encounter in life, whether at home or at work?
Personally, Gus, I think sometimes I got to remind myself that there is change, especially when it comes to at home. I mean, at work, we're used to it, and I'm used to it, and it's part of what we do every day. And really, a big part of my role is centered around change and managing change within the organization. But at home, I really don't necessarily think about it, and I could probably make use of some of the strategies. And I mean, I've also seen the not negative side of not managing change at home, but kids are very sensitive and can be very sensitive, and I mean adults as well. But I've lived it with my own kids, and some big changes in life, whether it was like moving from one house to another and not knowing what to expect, and you don't think about the impacts that might have on them, but it really does shake them up, and it doesn't show up necessarily in the ways that you think. Like you'll start to see some like maybe it's anxiety that's coming out, or not going to sleep, and they're just not themselves. And so I've kind of learned to see it after the fact, and I should probably learn from work and get ahead of it.
Yeah, there's lots in that. I mean, the change is actually a constant. The more I think about it, the more I realize that change is actually the constant that we're in. It sounds funny, sounds contradictory, but things are always changing. And I find when I identify a particular item that's changing, I may actually overemphasize it, or I may underemphasize it, especially around with the people I work with, or on the home front, like Eric, like you were saying, right? So I might make something out of it, make a big deal out of a change, which really it's just a normal change. It's a routine change, or it's one of um, just a process at work, right? We are constantly adopting new processes, bringing in new ways that we do work, do business, manage ourselves, new items on the plate, if I can say it, right? And then if I make light of that, it can have impact on the home front, or it can overemphasize something. On the flip side, I think is even more interesting is how when I forget to emphasize a change or an important change, how it can impact um, coworkers or those that I interact with at work and on the home front, my family. Right? It could be something as simple as you've got a ramp up in your demand at work, so you're working longer hours. Your focus is there. You're not unplugging, and not in a bad way. It's just there's times in business where you need to be really turned on and really into it, right?
That's
And are we exploring that on the home front, or how are we bringing that? How is that showing up at home, right?
Can I ask a question on there, Jake?
Yeah,
I mean, you and I chat all the time, and maybe sometimes I'm disruptive in my chat, especially around change. But if one of the things we've talked about recently has been like around getting things complete and having integrity around certain initiatives and changes. And so you touched on like work starts to ramp up. We get really busy. We might be spending a little bit more time at work, a little bit time away from work. Are you having conversations with your wife or your daughters about that, and or like making, hey, by the way, I'm just going to be longer, and changing how maybe it's the bedtime routine changes or that kind of thing?
yes and no. I find short term, I'm having a conversation. This week looks like such and such, or I'm not going to be able to help Thursday morning, or Friday after work or after school. Right? I'm having those conversations, but am I looking at it a little bit longer out? No, there's an opportunity there, right? So thinking about the impacts of a change at work on how it's going to affect the home front beyond the day or even couple day range. No, I gotta say I'm dropping the ball there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, when I think politics, I just think stakeholder management, especially when it comes to change, because there's so many people that have to be aware of what's going on, and possibly what's going to impact them or how they can contribute. And I think one of the things that I learned a lot from was, from schools. When we send our children home, or when we send our children to school, we don't often realize the impact that maybe we had a tough time getting them dressed and they really didn't want to go, and we just, we got them there, but nobody got the heads up that that's the condition that they were in. And when I had the conversation with a few teachers, we're like, if there's an impact or anything that's happened at home, if you could just give us a heads up, so this way we can understand more the context on which that, your child's behavior or your child's emotions or demeanor through the day can make more sense to us, and that there, that conversation I had, well over, to a decade ago with my oldest, and it really stuck with me because I started thinking about that in the context of not only from a communication standpoint with the schools, but at the same time, like you guys have just mentioned, if there's an impact at work and you got to get advice to your spouse or your children, say, I'm either going to be more available now because we're in a good spot and these are the things we can do, or moving forward, there's going to be times where I won't be available because I'm investing a little bit more energy into what's going on at work. But at the same time, like at work, it's we have those conversations a lot where, we want to have as much information as we can from the workforce so that we can make better decisions. And are we having those conversations with the teams to say, hey, you know what, if you had a significant impact throughout the night or between shifts or in the morning, can we have that open dialogue so that at least we can understand where your mindset is, so we can put you in a positive, put a positive spin on what's going on, so that we can all benefit from it and keep you from injury. Is that something that's happening with your teams at all?
I wouldn't say to that, maybe to those examples, Gus, but and I would, I don't want to sound negative maybe, but I think there's an opportunity there with our teams right now to explore that deeper. If I ground myself back into the conversation of the politics of change, what does that mean, right? So a change anywhere, whether it be in the work and the work that we're doing, a change on the home front, something out of the routine that could impact the parent, the worker, the child, the teacher, right? I don't know. I got to sum it up into one word. Is there communication happening on that?
Can I
There's opportunity there.
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I don't often do much prep before these sessions, just a conversation, but I tried to Google the definition of politics of change, and I actually found nothing. There's lots of stuff there around political change. So it would be interesting for me to get your perspective on what would you define as the politics of change. What would that definition be for you?
Well, it would be the impact of change in all the different facets that the change will touch, right? So what is that? So what is everything affected by the change? And what is the relationship of that change with what it's touching in the workforce, in the work stream, in the processes, right? The politics of change to me is beyond just when I think politics, the word that comes into my mind is that public sort of representation, right? And that figure point. So if we put that onto change, how is it landing for people? That's what it comes down to. The politics of change for me is, how does it land for people, the change? How does it impact them? How does it land for them? What is it bringing to them, taking away from them, right? You name it.
When I was
the total scope of impact of that change.
When I was pondering it, from like politics as in like political, as in like influencing, lobbying, understanding the stakeholders and all the people at play, and then there's a what's in it for me component for everyone, and then trying to like make it win-win, and then understanding the whole like gamut and process of like, where do I have to like start, who needs to be involved, like who are the key people in this initiative, who's going to help get this implemented, who stands to like gain, and what is it that they want to gain, and what are we trying to do. So I had that view. So I find it really interesting that you're on the like impact side of it, of like post change, or like the change happening and who it's impacting and how it's influencing. So Gus, I don't know what your thoughts are on the like your definition or your angle or view around what politics of change means to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about the term of, the politics of change, I always think so. Communication comes to mind right away, like public relations, so like Jake put it. But at the same time, is that whenever you're introducing something new or you're pivoting on something, you're trying to build yourself a following, right? So you try to align yourself with people that believe that it's going to work, and then try to grow that conversation exponentially. So across, whether it's a team, whether it's at home, or whether it's across multiple organizations. So when you're looking at, from politician standpoint, there's not a whole lot of influence they can have on anything that's going to occur if they don't have the fellowship, right? If they don't if they don't have people that'll be there to endorse it. So when I think about that within an organization, especially when we're dealing with different departments, right? So you have to have those conversations and almost have like an early adopter of what you're talking about at each department, so you can start planting the seeds for them to grow. At the same time, managing the conversations from a different angle, so that, to your point, Eric, that they can see a win from what you're bringing to the table. That's kind of like where I'm coming at with the politics. And I think, more specifically at work, there's also a different format of that, because you've got organizations where it's difficult to instill change when you have multiple silos or multiple departments where you have to deal with.
Every worker deserves to go home safely at the end of the day. Book your demo with Sophie to discover how their groundbreaking EHS management software empowers workers to proactively avoid hazards, and how organizations like yours can cultivate a stronger work culture. Learn more at sophie.com. Technica Mining is a premier underground mining and construction contractor. They stand for delivering quality project work on time and on budget through innovative thinking. Their excellent safety record, experienced workforce, and large equipment fleet will guarantee the timely completion of all your project needs. Trusted by the world's leading mining companies, Technica Mining has over 20 years of experience in mine construction, development, and production. Contact Technica Mining to take your next mining project to the next level. Learn more at technicamining.com. Change Itself is produced by Crownsman, the voice of industry. Check out more, including The Crownsman Show, Mining Now, Crownsman Energy, and Crownsman Egg at crownsman.com.
When I speak to a lot of different organizations or different groups, whenever I bring up the topic of, like, lessons learned, or what do you know from the past, it's often sort of like a something that kind of uncouples a little bit, because there's not always nobody, it's not often that people take the opportunity of, like, documenting history of what happened, and what to consider for next time. So then you end up having, in a political sense, you end up having groups that, they see change as, okay, great, it's another rinse and repeat approach, or a rinse and repeat attempt at getting us to do this, or having this take place. So let's see what happens this time. And then they end up getting disgruntled a little bit, because they can feel the repetitiveness of that change impact without without many differences between each attempt, right? Like, have you had that experience before, where it just feels like it's another initiative, and it follows through the exact same way as they always did, and it's going to do what it's going to do?
Yeah, you certainly run that risk. I mean, if you look at the people that are impacted, or you look at the receivers on the receiving end, right? If it's not successful, or it doesn't produce the results that um, are seen as value added, or whatever the reason, let's just say it's unsuccessful, and then you try it in a different sort of manner, without investigating it honestly. I mean, you have to investigate it honestly. You have to be honest as leaders in the organization as to why something didn't make it through the end, and or bring about the outputs that we needed. Right? If we can investigate that honestly, get to the root cause, then we likely will not try and uh, uh, reinvent the same failure with our clients, those that are actually um, on the receiving end of the change. We probably won't go there. But if we don't investigate that honestly, we could be rinsing, like you say, rinse, wash, and repeat. Could be trying the same thing again. So we've got to be honest. And it's okay that certain things took away from the success of the initiative. Maybe there's an urgency in the business. Maybe there's some catastrophic event that had happened in the business. Maybe the economic atmosphere is completely changed, right? There's lots of things that can knock the initiative off its course, but we have to investigate that honestly and right to the end.
I mean, I bring it up often where, the most precious commodity that we have on this planet is time, right? And if we look at it, we put so much effort and energy in communicating the reasons why to get funding or to get, to get buy-in an organization to invest the energy that goes into putting in something new or something different in play. And sometimes we don't want to take into account that we're asking for a huge investment for everybody involved, which is their time, the biggest investment of all. And I think, by putting that into perspective, I think it's a good opportunity to formulate a really good plan as to, hey, we're going after the most precious commodity on the planet, which is people's time. It's non-renewable. Once it's gone, it's gone. If we're asking them to, gracefully invest into this opportunity, then what do we need to put in place to gain their buy-in and to get that investment into this initiative, right?
Well, yeah, if you look at that last piece, Gus, as an actual question, what do we need to do, right? We need to understand where they are, whoever we're asking time from, where are they? Can they fit it on the plate? Does the space exist, right? And if this, you can have, I've seen some good initiatives not make it because there's no room on the plate for those that have the authority and more than that, the leadership to see an initiative through, right, or to really bring something very value added into a business, into an organization. You just can't fit it on the plate, right? So why is that? We need to understand where people are.
Right on. Eric, if I was to ask you, what is the primary stakeholder that you focus on when you decide to, roll something out or instill? Where would you say you do your reverse math from when you start, calculating or deciding or making a list or a hierarchy of who you need to engage with the most? Where does that start for you?
I think, speaking honestly, it's really at the senior leadership kind of level. So here be our project managers and department managers and Mario. But to the earlier point around like understanding who the other stakeholders that might be impacted, I think there's a huge opportunity on my behalf from what I learned today is to maybe focus on, okay, good, the people that I need to introduce the change to and work with to engage and make sure they're excited about this change and want it and are going to see it through, which is the project managers. But it's ultimately the person who's going to be doing the change, like implementing or actually being impacted by the change. And so we have seen that we've had great success when we focused there. And I've had flops where I've done, focus there and not focused enough on the other stakeholders being senior leadership. I've kind of seen it both ways, and it's really making that conscious effort to consider everybody involved and what's in it for everyone and what impacts it might have.
I mean, there's a lot of conversation about inclusivity, right? In every workplace. And that's sort of like, what I've been thinking about lately is the more inclusive you create your plans and the more inclusive you create the strategies, then probably the higher likelihood you're going to have in success in instilling any kind of change, right? Because it becomes a vast group effort with the masses versus something that trickles down through the org chart or otherwise, right? What do you think about that, Jake?
Yeah, you've got to understand the disruption, again, not in a negative sense of the word, but we like our routines, right? Why is that? Because we understand the input required, and we can pretty much guess the output that comes from a routine, right? So when we bring a change in, it disrupts the routine. And what is the impact of that? How do we, to what degree is the change, and how do we minimize the disruption? And it's not minimizing disruption around minimizing the effect on the existing routine. It's how do we, there's a bunch of things in that. There's the engagement, there's
How do you define disruption, Jake? Because it could be bad, it could be good, it could be just
well, just in relation to the routine. So this is the way we're doing something, and I do this, I get this output. That I do, we do this, we do it this way, we get this outcome. Right now, we want to change the way we do something. So we're disrupting. Again, it's got a negative connotation. So I apologize. Maybe it's the wrong word. We're disturbing the routine.
no, I
Right?
think this disruption to me it is really the right word because it's disturbing. It has so much when we make a change. So like one initiative you and I are working on right now is changing how we classify and identify, classify our hazards, right? And that's a really, at the end of the day, really seems like insignificant. But if I talk about disruption, that's the impacts that's going to have on people that are, not planned for and not necessarily decided. We can go make that change and not tell anybody, and all of a sudden they see it. And then that's like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. What does this mean? And then you're chasing the supervisor. Well, what does this mean? Or I'm like, I'm not reporting hazards and if we don't talk about it, that's what we get. But if we do talk about it, there's still a disruption where it's like, now, okay, how are we training this? How are we rolling this out? So we're taking that time, like Gus talking about, away from the whole line management, whether it's the project manager is going to be talking to his team about it, and then the superintendent's going to promote it, and we have we have the STS that's coming in making a presentation to teach people about this initiative, why we're making certain changes, and then it's in the workplace. It's like, okay, this happened, oh, what is this, or I forgot, or what do I do? That's kind of the impact, and that like the disruption that I see is, it's like, to your point, it's like the status quo, the routine. It might seem insignificant, but that routine is just completely like nothing's changed, but everything's changed. Right. I got to kind of like recenter myself on like reset what's normal and how this works. And then I'll just, after that initial disruption, things kind of like start to flow again. Like, is that what you mean by disruption?
Yeah, and that's what I kind of, to loop it back, that's kind of what I envisioned with the subject of politics of change, right?
Okay.
What is the impact of disruption and the change, the impact change to whatever it touches, right? But it's around considering everybody that's affected. But back to your point, Eric, is the communication of the why, and then the how do you say it? Maybe education for the purpose of enrollment in the initiative is very, very important. Right? It's like you say, you can make a small change, which may seem insignificant because we are operating in a certain reality. Maybe it's with a system, right? Like our safety software. And we make one tiny little change in there. It's a simple wording change. To us, it's almost insignificant. But the end user, it's now there's something that they don't recognize. Something is either being removed or replaced, or it's substituted. So the recognition of that and that routine in their choice and in the operating system has been changed. Right? That could be disruptive. It could cause confusion. It could cause frustration, and it could also spur more engagement. It could be yeah, they should have done that a long time ago. Right? You don't know.
That's the thing that I was going to bring up too is that on the positive side, sometimes it it's it's going to sound negative, but it backfires kind of thing where you're expecting it to go a certain way. And then it gets so much buy-in that now the pull
Yeah.
is bigger than you thought you could manage. So there's like, you're so focused on making sure they accept it, but then what if they accept it at scale? Then it kind of it kind of rolls back on you, and you got to kind of reformulate your plan on how you're going to deal with that so much. And Eric and I have been working on a couple of different things that over the past few years that's exactly what it created. It's on the software side, I always talk about this, that every feature will drive 3 more features, right? So it's either that the feature is not great and then it ends up asking, the ask becomes 3 more different things to kind of make it work, or it works so well that now they want, something happening in 3 different, in 3 different formats in the same way. So every time we release something new, there's always that, is it going to be adopted? And if it's going to be adopted, are we going to have to put ourselves on standby because 3 more requests of that same magnitude are going to come, which is interesting and it's disruptive. And the way that I talk about some of this stuff with our team, sometimes it's almost like if you look at a flower, right, or a plant, you put a plant in a contained environment so that you can have it thrive there. And when you transplant it to a new environment to allow it to grow even further, that transition, I mean, you've taken all the soil, everything is exactly the same, and you've put it in a bigger environment, and you have to nurture it tremendously for it to kind of, bond with that new environment for it to grow. But at that moment, it doesn't know that it's going to be so much bigger, stronger than before. It just knows, hey, my pot's different. My pot's different. What's happening? I'm not comfortable here. I was comfortable there, even though it was keeping it at a certain size, if that makes any sense, right? So we talk about that internally a lot of, okay, so now that we're transferring this pot, what are we going to have to invest and do to make sure that it doesn't alienate this plant, and then it can get to that next level of its journey, right?
Yeah,
We talked. Any comments on that?
Talked about like failure earlier and success and understanding where it comes from. And I think if we looked at our failures, there's different places where they could be, like, because there's different types of failures. There's the initiative of just not getting traction and getting anywhere, right? But then there's like failures in it, like you implemented it, but it didn't have the desired kind of acceptance or output or change, right? And everywhere along the way, it's going to be slightly different. And it's looking at those. So using your like flower analogy or your plant analogy, where you put it into the ground, if you're not a gardener or you're not thinking about, it's going to need more water or all these things, your plant's going to die, right? And so if you're just putting it there and you're not dealing with it, you're not checking in on it, you don't have a plan in place to like, engage it and make it successful, you're going to get what you get. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do, and we've had good conversation on that, Eric, right? Around some of our initiatives. It's the rollout's one thing, but the sustainability. What is the sustainability plan? What does it look like?
That's usually where, and I'll be honest, you and I, that's where we've been talking about or lately our area of focus has been around sustainability and how do we make these changes sustainable? We get some momentum, we get something going, we get it done, and then it's done. And then does it live on or does it just die? Like, does it need to be sustainable? Is it living and breathing? Like, I don't know, but that's where we've certainly put a lot of change into like what we consider to be successful lately, is we're looking at success as being, we've implemented a change that's important to us and that we want to sustain, and that we've made it sustainable.
Yeah, it's actually once the buzz dies off, the excitement of the change, right? I think there's the bulk of the work is actually in the sustainability of it. I mean, because everybody's busy. We've got new things, new initiatives, right? But those previously implemented initiatives, what are we doing to maintain them, to check on their effectiveness, to inject energy where we need to, right? To keep them functioning the way they were designed, intended, and even initially implemented to function, right? What are we doing? What
We've
does
seen
that plan look like?
when that doesn't happen, we end up with like call it the random acts of management where you're
Yeah,
like, okay, this one,
more.
say we're talking about that hazard identification piece. Once we get that rolled out, if we don't keep talking about it or bring it back up or reintroducing it in some different way, it just becomes part of everything we do. And then it's like, okay, well, we need something new to like jazz up and like bring up the energy, and we're going to fire something new at it when we could just reinvigorate the conversation around that initiative and like, maintain it and keep it, make it sustainable. That way it just doesn't fall off the rails or we forget about it. And then we add one more thing on and we try to make that sustainable. And it's like a perpetuating cycle. That thing will, be successful for a few minutes or a few days or months. And then all of a sudden it's not like we're not seeing the impacts of performance we want. And then boom, let's try something new again. And we just end up in that constant loop and we add more and more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, like it just seems like every other month we got a new thing going on.
Yeah, we can quickly fall into blaming the initiative as being unsuccessful when it may have nothing to do with the initiative. Right? It's all after the fact. It'd be a fantastic initiative, but we didn't maintain it.
So I guess it's almost like inviting everybody for a second honeymoon, right? Like once that excitement kind of fades off and you're into that long-term, now you're into the long-term segment is, creating the opportunity to go on a vacation again or have that honeymoon come back again where you can make it exciting again, the same as it was when you first brought it on, and then, keep repeating that to get the long-term sustainability, I guess is what I'm hearing, right?
So Jake, to expand, and this is a little bit of a conversation we had maybe earlier in the day, but it's like it's not exciting, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, I already know that works. It's already been there. There's some excitement in going to do that new thing, but
Yeah,
really we would just be as successful if we focused and, came back on that initiative. And I wonder if that has to do with it sometimes, just like, it's exciting to be like pushing the limit and going to that new thing and like introducing that piece. Like, any thoughts there?
oh, there's tons of thoughts there. I mean, there's sometimes we take on initiatives because they're cool, right? Well, that's cool, that's exciting, or somebody's doing this and they got these results and we like it, we like the excitement of it. It's shiny, it's new, we can see other people's success in it and we're all in, right? But have we really thought about it, right? It's like the fishing lure, right? It catches our attention and we bite. I mean, how do you catch fish with the lure, shiny lure, right? So we got to watch some of these ideas for change. Do they really fit? And what is the whole plan? From is it a fit? And if yes, what's our rollout? What's our the implementation plan? What's the sustainability plan? And what's the monitoring and make sure that it's still doing what we need to do or giving us what we need it to get us? Sometimes the business changes and the initiative is just no longer compatible. You got to look at it in its entire lifespan, right? And it might be long-term life of business initiative, or it might just fit a certain time period. But definitely, definitely like the shiny. We go after it. It's in our nature, right? We like.
Now we all want those results, right? It's that do 100 crunches, you're gonna have abs. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, you ask most people who buy a new car, why'd you buy a new car? I got tired of the old one. The old one gets them to the office every day, and but the new one's exciting, right?
The new one's exciting.
Feel like a new car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you spill your first coffee in it, then it becomes, it starts the journey towards the next new car.
Yeah.
That first dent.
But that's a positive that we're attracted to the shiny, because then we're looking, right? Then we're always exploring possibilities. The trick is just to keep our human human element in check, and we don't always have to bite that over. Let's take a look at it first, right?
Yeah, sometimes we just gotta, be satisfied with what we have and keep using what we have and actually get more out of it. And it's so from a change, it's like more of the same, but we can change the approach, we can change the focus. Like you've got this wonderful tool, and we limit ourselves to what it can do based off of how we initially talked about it or thought about it. Like you can bring things back to life with just, you know, thinking about it differently. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And in the
Right
realm
on.
of health and safety, I think most in mining, anyways, most companies have those foundational elements around risk management. Let me just back up health and safety and the health and safety front. The foundational elements they're already set. They work. We know they work, right? And sometimes we don't get the performance that we envision because maybe we're not operating in those foundational elements like we should be, right?
Yep.
Maybe we're chasing other things, right? Are we using the tools that we have to their full effect? Are we evaluating the performance of it? Right? And then there's change within those tools. There's usually opportunity for change within the existing tools, right? That can really enhance performance. Yeah, fascinating.
Right on. Yeah, it's been a great conversation for respect of time, because I know we promised our viewers a long format podcast, but I know a lot of our conversations can last a heck of a long time. So it's always interesting when we bring on guests such as yourself to discuss key topics. And we always, want to reserve a few minutes at the end for some tech talk or for some new things that we've encountered. So being that we're the first episode of 2022, have you guys seen something over the past little while that is that shiny object that you're kind of looking at for this year to see how it could impact your business or your home life, or maybe expand on your fishing game, Eric, things like that? Is there anything that came across your way that you want to bring up?
I'm chasing a few right now. I got a meeting actually tomorrow morning, and I'll keep names out of it for now. But we've talked about this year getting into some virtual reality training um, for a really common piece of equipment and to start building our fleet in virtual reality. And then just after a few conversations, I really got a different appreciation for augmented reality and what that might bring to the table. As far as both enabling it in virtual reality or just augmented reality where you are in the environment, which it makes it really attractive to us. So I'm keeping an eye out on the HoloLens 2 and what that's possible and what that can bring to training for us as far as like making equipment available when we want to. And there's some really interesting stuff out there already where there's 3D models that already exist, CAD models that people have online that are selling that I had no idea till last week. And I think that's kind of the start of the future for us. That's what I'm looking at, and that's what I'm seeing right now.
Very cool. Like I said, for me, it's been about the Peloton lately, right? It's been a popular company for the past little while. But man, when I started diving into that, I said, you know what, this is actually going to make me better at work, because getting into that physical health side of things, and diving into that and investing energy there, and just the way that they brought the audience together by making it a community. And it's sort of like a on demand training sessions with a trainer right in front of you talking about it with different music and things like that. They've done a really good job. I was actually pretty happy with it. So that's the tech that I'm going to be leaning on for the next little bit to propel me into the year, get some more energy, and like you talked about, make things exciting again with things that we're working with long term, right?
Yeah, I'll echo what Eric's put forth. I mean, that the immersive reality, like that immersive technology, I think is huge, and just the application of simulator training, either full immersive virtual or actual physical, combination of physical and virtual. I think it's huge. The benefits there, the more I'm around this industry and the exposures that the simulators can provide, and the accessibility, the instant accessibility to some of this experience, right? And fairly real world experience, if not almost identical, when you're talking in the virtual world, and then the benefits to the equipment, freeing up the equipment to do its job it needs to do. You know, it's a very valuable tool, and just want to see where that goes.
Yeah, and with the augmentation, you take the risk out of it too, right? Because
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to really inspect things and really understand how a piece of equipment operates, you don't necessarily have to go stick your head in there or your hands in there. You can actually, like Eric was talking about the augmentation. I mean, you can really understand and learn and know a lot more than you've ever done and than you've ever known about a specific piece of equipment and how it operates without putting yourself in harm's way, which is awesome.
Yeah, you can show, you can show, and true representation, right? Accurate representation.
The other part that I think that's coming with all this and keeping my eye on for the year and actually kind of exploring for ourselves is just this idea around data and driven decisions, as far as like how, like, we have all these different data sources, and they got so much information there to tell us and insights for us, but we're largely leaving it untapped. So as we start to look at new initiatives, it's like, how do we structure it for so it's useful in the future, and then how do we leverage and use what we've already got and put it together so we don't have to do more, or have to do, increase things for people or add on to people's workloads, back to that time piece. But that's really what I'm looking at, is like, how do we leverage what we already have and what we're already doing to tell us more, and start looking for correlations within our data sets that indicate the likelihood of incidents and that kind of thing. That's what we're up to for the year.
Right on. Well, hey, thanks a lot again, guys, for joining us on this episode. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation, and I think the key takeaways for us is probably, make sure you contact all the people that could be impacted on your change, make things exciting, and don't forget that what's already there could be just as exciting as it was when you first got it, right? So it's kind of like my takeaways that I got for this one. And for everybody watching, please like, subscribe, and comment on what you've seen. And if you by chance are interested in coming on the show and sharing your thoughts with us, we're always open to having new guests from different industries and different walks of life join us. So drop us a message, and we'll be glad to reach out to you and make some plans. So welcome everybody to 2022. Happy New Year, everyone, and we look forward to delivering great content for you all year long.